Hey everybody. Oh, Jeff Rucker here again. The last video I made for YouTube was about what I think is the big Easter egg in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, and it actually carries over into Volume 2. Meredith Quill's identity. She is a daughter of eternity. That's another video of mine, but this video is still going to be along the same lines, except I'm going to expand on that. I've had a month to think about this since I made the realization, and during that time, my thoughts about certain aspects of the Easter egg have developed. I'm still pretty certain that's what it is, but it's expanded, and I've had, how do I want to say that? It's grown enough to the point where I think I can actually see the direction that some things were going. Possible storylines that were there, thoughts, maybe even behind what James Gunn was thinking, or the intentions of some things in the movies. And this isn't an Easter egg where it's just, hey, it's Walrus. It's like, oh, good eye. There's so much more to it. There's storyline, emotions. It's so complex. He said it was. He said that very thing, and it's no lie. I can honestly say that. But yeah, I'm gonna start off with a story that I think probably was going to happen, expanding the Easter egg, questions that I've come up with. I don't have many people that I can bounce questions off of. I've had a few that have come up, but mostly this is just stuff in my head, possible retcon for something that we've seen in the MCU. So, best place to start off, first movie, first scene. And I have notes I'm going off of too, because this is just way too much to keep up here and go off of my head. The first one I just went off my head and it was fine, but trying to keep myself organized here. Okay, so opening scene, Meredith Quill is dying of cancer. It's the hospital, family, I'm assuming friends are there too, and Peter's out in the hallway, gets called in to talk to his mom. Really, the part about this that's the hardest to watch, where the emotion really comes into it, is when Meredith asks for Peter's hand, and Peter pulls away his hand. Prior to this, Meredith had said, trying to talk about Peter's father, saying that he's an angel composed of white light. And to a lot of the people in that room, it probably seemed like she was probably lucid. This was either drugs talking, medication to keep her pain down, or something else, or that this was the cancer talking through her. But we know from seeing Volume 2 that she was completely clear of thought. We know that this is what ego was, like when we actually saw him on the inside of the planet. So there's no doubt that her brain was fine during this. But going along those lines, she already said what his father was, and I don't know if they had ever heard that before. I don't know if Peter had ever heard that before. You got to think, he is, at his age, he would probably be bullied for his situation. A kid without a father, in the South, I'm imagining it's a very religious type backdrop. It's not the ideal setting. It's not what's preached to have like those type of households, relationships, whatever. He was probably picked on a lot for it. He was probably teased, probably called a bastard so many times because of it. Um, and they definitely had a strained relationship there. So when she reaches out for his hand, it's kind of not surprising that he pulled away, and that she was, he was waiting out in the hospital. It wasn't until Grandpa came in there. It's probably hard to see her like that, and he probably got picked on for the fact that his mom was struggling with cancer. It's kids will, you know, bullies will pick on people because of their own insecurities, and you see it so much in kids too. That I'm sure it was probably an everyday part of his life. So when she reached out, it wasn't a surprise that he pulled back his hand, but it's really at this point, I think she was going to tell him right then. I think she was going to take his hand and actually tell him that she is a daughter of eternity, and that he is essentially cosmic royalty. He is a star lord. Like, this is more than just a nickname. It's a title that he actually earned. Well, born into. Didn't really earn it. But it didn't happen. She died. I think the strain of not being able to tell him was just too much. She was so close. And, Peter goes running off into, outside of the hospital and gets beamed up onto the Ravager ship. An interesting thing, if you want to think about it, and of course I have, at the same time that he's being beamed up, if Meredith is a daughter of eternity, I'm pretty sure of it, that at some point she was being reassimilated or reabsorbed back into eternity. What if we actually pan the camera over at the same time he's getting beamed up, or she's actually getting beamed up? I don't know if it'd be visible to everyone that's in the hospital room, but to have her soul just being pulled right back up and to be a part of eternity again. And yeah, it kind of the parallel there just kind of paints a nice picture in my head, I guess. I don't know. I thought that would be kind of cool if that's where the storyline was actually going. But the thing about that is, if she was going to tell him, that means she knew what she was. Okay? She did not know her entire life. I'm pretty certain of that. I have a few reasons, but to get to the point that she knew, the reasons that it's obvious that she knew what she was, the playlists that she made. Eric Voss went into a great breakdown of this, all of the songs, how it's almost like a character speaking to Peter. And really, it's more than just a collection of Meredith's favorite songs. It is it's her. She's trying to tell him what she is, and she probably knew for a little while. I have some ideas about how long she knew, but that's not something that's easy to tell a kid. I mean, she didn't tell what his father was. Ego. She didn't say anything about that. The angel of white light, maybe she did at some point. Who knows if that was easy to handle, and maybe that strained the relationship. But I don't think she did. I don't think she told him, obviously, that he was a grandson of eternity. But as some people do when they're nearing the end of their life or an unforeseen situation, think of Tony Stark, in Endgame. He made a video in case of some unfortunate event coming up, and it came up and we saw it, and that was directed at his daughter. I think that was the purpose of the cassette. It was songs that she loved, It was songs to comfort him and songs to tell him what she was, really. The other part about that is, his nickname, Star-Lord. I said already, he is essentially cosmic royalty, a lord, really. It's not just some fun name for him. It's a title. So she definitely knew. How did she know? Okay, so if you look in Volume 2, jumping ahead to that, when we see her at the beginning of the film with Ego, it seemed like she was so naive. Like she would have believed anything that he said and just soaked it up. She was like a sponge. And really, that was the purpose of what she was doing, like, in that point, okay? She was designed to just soak up knowledge. A daughter of eternity is sent out to live as a creature, as a certain creature, and to experience life as that creature. And actually, when they die, come back, and Ego can learn what it's like to live, to love, laugh, anything else with an L in front of it. That's the whole point. That's what she is made for. Okay, so she was just soaking up everything in that. She would have bought anything that Ego told her at that point. But eventually she had the cancer that Ego put into her head. Now this is where I think that she actually probably actually learned what she was. Because with the cancer going around the first time, I really wonder if she might have had a near-death experience as a result of the cancer. If she did, the first time around, if she was near death or dying, she might have actually been brought before eternity at that point. Now, what would have brought her back? Okay, maybe doctors resuscitated her, brought her back, and were able to manage the cancer for a little bit longer. Maybe, and I don't know if that's so much the case. It's not really the heartstrings that you're pulling with that one. Maybe actually being brought in front of eternity, she pled with him. Because you gotta imagine, Peter's at a young age. He's not developed enough to take care of himself, and she's the only one taking care of him. Eternity of all of the gods is more human-like and has a heart for the actual needs of everyone in the universe. And if her plea was genuine enough, I think he probably would have let her have enough time to get him to a point where he actually could at least take care of himself a little bit more. It's either that or eternity saw where she was at and felt mercy. Maybe cancer wasn't the original plan of when she was supposed to die, so he was like, well, that's funny. I'm gonna give you a little bit more time to work some things out. There's more that I want to learn. So it could have been pleading that actually got her to get to that point. It's either that or somewhere along the line, after the first bout with cancer, going into the second bout with cancer, being through that, I think she was probably a little more accepting of her fate. A little more accepting that it was going to take her, depending on the type of cancer that it was. And maybe with the function of her actually being to learn until death, if she's ready to die, I would imagine eternity would be watching her, and maybe at that point, if she genuinely felt it, then he would have let her know. It's probably from some experience coming through, close to death, accepting of death, that she actually learned what she was. So, on to questions. I actually do have one question that someone else asked that wasn't me. So, okay, with bouncing it around in my head. Nerd Knows, that's the name, asked me if with Meredith being a daughter of eternity, if she was going to pass her powers on to Peter. And the answer to that is she didn't have powers. And that's why I truly believe it's a little bit different. This is where the comics and the MCU actually differ from each other. In the comics, a Daughter of Eternity was essentially this universal threat with the amount of power that they had. Eternity was going to die if they didn't reabsorb back into him. So it took a lot of powerful beings to actually defeat them and get them to be reabsorbed into eternity to live. But if you think about the design of what they are, to learn what it's like to be, in Meredith's case, learning what it's like to be human, why would you give her powers? If she finds out about them, she is no longer living the human experience. She's not living as a human. She's living as a pseudo god at that point. I mean, if I knew that I had powers, I wouldn't be living the way that I was. I would test that stuff. Like, my gosh, I gotta check if I'm invulnerable, and then, you know, like 5 minutes later, there's eternity going. Well, I learned what pain was. I know the term suicide now, and I think I heard about something called an closed casket funeral. So I'm going big. So these things didn't have powers. You're not going to give them the ability to do whatever. I mean, if you want to learn what it's like to be a human, you're not going to watch Mad Jim Jasper and see what he does, because, you know, that's a universal threat right there. It doesn't make sense for her to have any powers in that case. So that's that question. Yeah, she's just there to observe and report, essentially. But then on to the gene. The celestial gene that came through, and that's the important thing about why Peter was able to do what he did, grabbing the Infinity Stone and actually surviving. So how was it that Meredith got the celestial gene? One possibility: eternity messed up. Like, maybe he coughed, or just a little brain fart at the time and accidentally gave her the gene. He very well could have done that. He's capable of making mistakes. That does come up, but I don't necessarily think so. Another option is that it was already there. That if you watch my other video, you'll know that I thought that there are multiple Daughters of Eternity. All of the creatures that Ego had sex with and had children with, that he's shown in Volume 2, I think those are all Daughters of Eternity. Maybe the gene was actually dormant inside of them and just never expressed itself. And through Peter, it actually did. That's possible too. It's hard to know how they actually work in that situation. Another possibility, which opens up a retcon that I think would be really interesting: what if, when Eternity was actually making a human, the human that he was looking at as an example had a celestial gene in it already? What if, say, Eternity was actually looking at an Eternal that had one of these genes in it, and he's just like, well, that's a human, here you go, and just made one? And in that case, he wouldn't have made a mistake. He would have made what he saw, which he thought was a human at that point. I mean, mistaken judgment, that's about it. Which, that brings up the retcon. So the actress that actually played Meredith Quill is also in Captain America, the First Avenger. What if that character, now they've said that they're separate, you know, not the same character between the two things, but what if the character in the First Avenger was actually an Eternal that had a celestial gene inside of it, and that's what ego or eternity actually used to model Meredith Quill after. That's that'd be an interesting retcon, and that's how you could explain that the two roles by the same actress. So just kind of had that thought today. I kind of really like that idea. Okay, page 2. We're getting there. Okay. The thoughts on ego. He, in the first one, I said that he was completely full of crap. He is the biggest bullshit artist, and I'm so sorry for swearing. I can't do kid-friendly anymore. I apologize for that. He's so full of crap. But I thought that maybe he was lying about sending off parts of himself to actually see what it's like to live, whatever. He could have actually been honest about that he had the intentions of doing it to see what life was like, and then he truly was disappointed with it. He was just like, this is horrible. I gotta make everything in my own image. And it's possible that he got the idea to do this by watching the gods, by watching Eternity. Maybe some of the other gods have actually done the same thing as well. So he was like, hey, it's the thing to do. I can do it. I'm a G, not a big G. I'm a little G. Let's do this. And then he was like, you know what? I got to change this. We got to move on. I got to make everything something that I like. Remodeling. So, but he was. There was something about him that was spiteful towards the gods. And, he said, when he found out what Peter was, that he was so proud that he was finally not alone, in the universe. That there could be a being something like him or be, a part of him. But when he's saying this, I can't help but think, you had, you had others that wanted to love you, Meredith, you weren't alone with her, your little river lily. You had opportunities to, not be alone. So I really think, the driver of what he was doing was to make his plan go through. It wasn't to find a connection with someone like Meredith, because he found that connection, and then he just was like, I can't do this. I think, most likely he was full of crap the whole time. But just why he's spiteful towards the gods, maybe they have legs and he doesn't. Angry towards the gods, doesn't have legs. He's kind of like the Lieutenant Dan of the MCU. Just cursing up at the heavens, and you won't sink the ship. That would have been genius casting if they actually got what's his name, Gary Sinise for that. Maybe not the same heartthrob level that they needed for that, the same rugged good looks as Kurt Russell, but I had that thought. I was like, that's kind of funny. But yeah, he was definitely spiteful towards the big G's of the universe, probably because they have such reach all the time, and he's just stuck being little G. So he didn't have that effect that he wanted. He didn't have that effect through the universe that he wanted to. Not being able to reach any spot, anytime. And, he was always watching. I've come up with the term over the past month. I'll call it universal sight. I think Ego, his power was that part of his power is that he could see anything. If you think about the planet Ego, more like what the comic book is, it's a huge planet, and it has eyes on it. I mean, to compare it to anything on Earth, I'll say the Very Large Array. You know, the VLA. It's a satellite network in the desert. Not like the oh, what was the satellite that dish in Central America that just broke? It, just one big dish, but just an array of satellites stretching out for a very long distance and compiling data coming in, and it's used to peer into deep space, you know, to take measurements. And I really think, you know, you have a face on a planet, it has eyes. Those eyes have to serve a purpose. You know, form follows function. So he's able to see a ton. And when he's even saying that he heard that, you know, people in the universe were talking about Peter Quill actually, you know, a Terran holding an Infinity Stone, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually read it on the lips of people. Seeing people on planets actually talking about this. I don't think it was beyond his ability at that time. But with Universal Sight, he didn't have Universal Reach, and that's the one thing he wanted. Part of his Universal Sight, that's what he gave to Peter. I think it was while Peter was on the planet, or at least while Ego was letting him actually use the ability, when he touched him and Peter could see eternity. That is the power being bestowed to him at that point. And really, I wonder why. I wouldn't have been surprised if Peter was just like staring up, like, I could see it. Your search history. Because that's what it was. That's what flashed in. He was staring at eternity for so long. He's like, I can see eternity. And you get that flash coming right back. I might have used that line in my other video. I can't remember. I don't like listening to my own voice. Yeah, so... yeah, moving on. I'm almost towards the end here. Oh, some other random observations here. With Ego, I thought it'd be funny. I'm surprised he really didn't have like a, yeah, this is more of a joke than anything else. He didn't have like a volcano on his face. Like, it's a planet, and like to shoot his ship off into the universe, because there's so many phallic things to it already. It's like just a giant volcano with that on top of it, you know, that truly would have made him a dickhead. Yeah, I wasn't going with kid-friendly saying that. What was I thinking? Anyway. Any other thoughts I had on this? Eternity. When they're in the cloud at the end of Volume 1 and you see the whole thing open up, that space scene behind him, whether it's standing very close in front of eternity, whether it's actually inside of eternity, here's the cheese part. It was inside of eternity's heart. Oh, why was it Meredith that he saw? Well, you know, he's already holding on to an Infinity Stone. He probably thinks he's gonna die. If he sees the face of eternity right in front of his, that may finish him off. That may give him a heart attack at that point. At least crapping his pants. But at least with Meredith, that portion of eternity coming through, that's supporting, loving persona that is there, that he can find comfort in. So, yeah, I believe that is everything on here. Again, I didn't say this at the end of my other video. Please, if you like this, if you think I'm right, if you think I have some really good points to it, share it, tweet it. James Gunn, definitely. MT, Mastertainment, who actually started this whole thing with finding the code, send it his way. I think this is going to be more in-depth character-wise than anything that he's going to put out, so I think he might appreciate that. And I know he's working on something that he thinks right now is the Easter egg, So fingers crossed. Maybe I'll beat him to it. I mean, I already put out the main part of the theory a month ago, but I wanted to do this follow up to go with it. But send it. Eric Voss, Philip Molina, anyone that you think might enjoy this, please send it their way. I'm going to be putting it onto the New Rockstars Discord. I'm hoping it gets seen on there. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you enjoy watching the movies. With this being so big, it adds so much onto the story that's being told. It really makes me appreciate it more. The work that goes into it, it's a labor of love. To have something that's an Easter egg, something that wasn't necessarily, overtly out there, that could add so much onto it once it's actually seen and discovered. So, James Gunn, hats off. You did an incredible job with this. So, I appreciate. I enjoy watching the movies more. So I'm looking forward to watching them again. I just got a new TV not too long ago. So yeah, it'll be my first time actually watching it since I've come up with this theory. This has all been in my head this whole time. So yeah, I don't really have a sign off. Maybe that's my sign off right there. Take care, enjoy, and please share. Thank you.